So this evening, guest speaker, we're really excited to have Dexter King, who's the Director of Procurement Services at York University. Dexter is a procurement professional with over 20 years of public and private sector procurement experience, including senior procurement roles with one of Canada's largest construction firms. In his current role as the Director of Procurement Services at York University, he is responsible for managing not, I'm gonna back that up a little bit. $250 million of annual spend for the university. Dexter is a certified supply chain management professional, CSCMP, with Supply Chain Canada, and a certified project management professional, PMP, with the Project Management Institute. Dexter, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Welcome.
How are you?
Really, really good. Really, really excited. You know, tonight's call, we have 27 people so far. And, you know, we haven't broken the 22 or the 20 mark over the last couple of weeks. And that doesn't say to take away from any of the session, but that tells me that we have a special guest tonight and people are interested in what you have to say. So I'm really excited for tonight and for the new folks who are calling in. So I'm just going to jump right into it. For folks who don't know, please explain what social procurement is.
Yeah, sure. Amin, good to see you.
Yes, you too.
I'm not sure. Good to see you. So do you want me video on or off, Brandon?
If you can have your video on, that'd be awesome, actually.
Okay. Because I heard your message about bandwidth, so I went.
Yeah, so you know what, I should have clarified. So with everyone exception of yourself and I from this point on, you and I can keep our videos on and everyone else keep their videos off.
Okay, what are we gonna do for questions?
So for questions that I'd like to have at the end of the conversation, if someone has a question, then they can turn their videos on and ask their question and unmute themselves during that time.
Okay, fantastic. So again, thanks Brandon for the invite. Happy to share what's happening at York. So your first question was social procurement, what's it all about?
Yeah.
So the whole idea of social procurement, it's leveraging an organization's existing purchasing power, so like York, to increase community benefits. So these benefits could include targeted employment and training towards equity-seeking groups, as an example. So social procurement also supports local economic development, such as supporting local suppliers and diverse-owned businesses by directing spend towards those businesses. So social procurement is essentially a migration from being focused on the cost, the traditional cost of goods being bought and sold, to one where social value and positive community outcomes can be realized. This is the intent of social procurement.
And what is your role with York University?
Okay, so my role, so I'm the Director of Procurement at York University, as you saw on the intro slide. We are a team of 14 staff. We procure goods and services for the university under a centralized model, meaning that the majority of purchases conducted at the university are funneled through my department. So these purchases could be anything from office supplies, so pens and paper, to $1 million MRI units, to consulting and construction services contracts. My team processes on an annual basis anywhere from $250 to $300 million in competitive procurements annually. This number fluctuates depending on the number of capital construction projects that we tender annually from year to year. We manage the importing and exporting of goods globally, as well as we also manage all the couriers on campus, all the courier contracts, university P-card and travel cards. So we actually have a P-card program, visa program, as well as we manage all vendor contracts, and we approve and issue all contracts on behalf of the university. So those are the main core functions that we perform at York.
When you said you said a P card, you said?
Yeah, purchase card, that's short for purchase card.
Okay.
So procurements at the university under $10,000, we probably have close to about 450 to 500 P cards, visa cards in circulation, where researchers and other community members can actually go out and buy, procure goods and services that are under $10,000.
Sorry, folks, if you can just go on mute, please. sorry, do you mind just repeating what you about the P cards, please? The purchase cards?
Yeah, so these are essentially Visa cards. Our service provider is US Bank, and we probably have about close to 500 in circulation. And these are handed out to community members, folks in facilities, for example, researchers. I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, so they're handed out to community members, and what they do is they go out and they procure low-valued procurements. If they need to buy something from Amazon, or a researcher needs to buy, a piece of research equipment that's a few $1,000s, maybe $2,000 or $3,000. We've delegated the authority to the community to go out and make those low-value purchases. So we're actually not bogged down within procurement, resource-wise, taking care of those low-value purchases.
Can you give
So
a couple
our
sorry, go ahead.
annual spend is around $40 million in P card purchases across campus annually.
Can you give an example of when you like simple like when you say P cards, what those may be or low purchase items?
Examples of low purchase items.
Yeah.
It could be samples from a lab supply companies for a research project that a researcher is working on. It could be a chair, a piece of furniture, or a lab desk, or any kind of lab equipment. It could be cleaning supplies. Anything that's low value that we typically don't want to see in procurement. We've delegated the authority to the community to go out and make those buys. And what we do is, in concert with internal audit, they run annual audits to ensure that folks are adhering to policy and they're not buying anything that they shouldn't be buying.
Okay.
Because there is risk with that.
Okay. I want to ask you about those risks, but I want to keep on track. But if you don't mind asking, when you say there's risk to that, what are some of the risks
Well, fraud.
come up?
I'll use the F word, fraud. So in the past, and it comes up from time to time at other institutions, including municipalities, school boards, where people have P cards and they go out and they buy iPhones. There was a lady in the news recently, she went and bought, I don't know, over the span of 4 or 5 years, she bought something like 1,500 to 2,000 iPhones. She'd use her work issued P card, credit card, and she was, I think, in finance. So she knew what she had to do to bury the information. And she sold them on Kijiji or Craigslist for a fraction of the cost.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there is inherent risks in managing a P card program as large as ours, but we have a lot of checks and balances in place to ensure that people aren't doing things that they shouldn't be doing with university funds, public funds for that matter.
Okay. What are the benefits for York University to partake in social procurement, specifically around the new construction that's being done, that you guys are doing?
So in my opinion, social procurement, it enables York's desire to deliver on its foundational pillars. And we have 4 of them: accessibility, connectedness, excellence, and impact, by facilitating an increase to local employment opportunities for disadvantaged groups, especially the youth in the community, who often face barriers in accessing labor markets, right? So locally owned businesses, including social enterprises, and social enterprises are businesses that have a social purpose. So they hire locally, maybe they hire ex-convicts, but at the end of the day, a lot of, or a good majority of their profits are re-injected back into the business and the community, okay? So locally owned businesses, again, including social enterprises, are critical job creators within the community, and they have a direct line of sight to the environmental impact of their business decisions. And they are more likely to employ vulnerable members of the community, are more likely to invest in community. So social procurement opportunities to these businesses can enhance the positive social, economic, and environmental returns to communities. So this is why we're on this journey.
And you touched on the postal code. I was just taking some notes. So the postal code and equity seeking groups, especially youth. Let's an example of York University, the Keele Campus. What is the postal code that is accepted for that project?
So there's one project. It's a $45 million new build. We just broke ground maybe a month ago. And in that contract, we have pre-established postal codes, which I can't rhyme off at the moment. But basically the quadrant, I believe it goes north to Steeles. It goes west to the 400, I believe, south to Shepherd, and east to Dufferin. That's kind of the quadrant. I believe it actually goes a bit further south, but we actually embedded those postal codes right into the RFP, the tender contract, and the awarded contractor has to draw apprentices from within that zone or caption area.
And then you have another project coming up at another campus that would be, when you talk about postal code, it will be for that particular area as well.
Yeah, so you're referring to, which is not public knowledge at this point. I think the announcement is probably 2 weeks out. So as some of you are aware, if you follow the news, how long has it been? How long has the PC government been in power? 3 years? Has it been 3 years yet? Maybe 2.5, 2 and a bit. So when they came into power, they canceled the funding for expansion into Markham. We were building a campus in Markham. Ryerson, I think, was expanding into Caledon, and there's a few other universities that were branching out across the province. So we got our funding pulled, and our president, being as persistent as she is, she was able to raise funds outside of the government promised dollars to make this campus happen. So we recently awarded a contract for a new campus in Markham. The value of that project is $172 million. It hasn't broken ground yet because, like I said, we can't do so until such time as the premier has made the official announcement that the project is moving ahead and that they're supporting it, as well as the president of the university and the city of Markham. The city of Markham actually donated the land that we're going to be building the campus on. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. So you didn't hear it from me, but we're moving ahead with that project. Now, specifically in terms of postal codes, yes, we're going to be looking to support first the local sort of Markham, York region catchment area. And outside of that, if we're not able to draw sufficient resources, whether it be apprentices or suppliers, we will sort of fan out into the GTA.
Okay, I appreciate the transparency.
Mm-hmm.
What does social procurement mean for community members who are apprentices in construction or contractors who live in communities? Sorry. Again, I want to ask folks just to keep your phones or devices on mute. Let's repeat the question. What does social procurement mean for community members who are apprentices in construction or contractors who live in communities near York University?
So, well, for apprentices, it means adding to and developing the human capital. And by human capital, I mean skills development, learning, and training. So it adds to the development of the community as a whole, as well as themselves. I think it provides youth within the Jane Finch and surrounding communities an opportunity to earn significantly more than minimum wage. And it sets them on a course towards learning a life skill or trade for life, whether it's becoming a carpenter, plumber, electrician, that will continue to provide sustained growth in their lives and within that community. So that's kind of my view on what an apprentice will gather from being, potentially pulled in by a contractor to work at York.
And what does social procurement mean for community members who are apprentices in construction or contractors who are from equity-seeking groups?
So to me, social procurement at York means that, again, the university is committed to developing its surrounding communities through local workforce development. And that's kind of the pillar of our social procurement policy as well. It's geared towards workforce development and supplier development. On the capital construction projects, where it's feasible, we've embedded hard targets, like I mentioned before, on our awarded contracts. They have to deliver on those, each contractor. So they must hire a set number of apprentices from equity-seeking groups, because we say so in the document, on each of those projects in some cases. And in some cases, they have to deliver on hard targets around spend. So for example, I believe on the School of Continuing Studies, the contractor has to spend locally amongst suppliers a minimum of $600,000, right? So again, our commitment extends beyond these pilot projects that we're running, and there's a few of them, because this is going to be the norm moving forward. We're going to embed social outcomes, social benefits, social procurement deliverables in all of our construction projects.
Yeah, that's exciting news. Can you talk a bit about the partnership between York University and Toronto Community Benefits Network and the employment opportunities?
Okay, so again, on that project, we partnered with TCBN, $45 million project, new SCF building. We actually named TCBN as part of a tri-membership partnership in the tender contract. The plan here is to leverage TCBN's knowledge and pre-established relationships with the trade unions, employment agencies, and other community-based groups, which they're experts at sort of bringing together, to create a pipeline of individuals, right, equity-seeking groups, individuals from those groups, for the awarded contractor to draw from, based on the criteria, again, in the contract. And again, that's being based within the local community and from equity-seeking groups. So TCBN has began working with the contractor, which is Aquacon is the name of the contractor, to provide data on local minority-owned businesses. And they've established connections between the trade unions and the contractor. And I believe your leader, Rosemary Powell, we've had several meetings with the contractor. She's a firecracker, that one. I don't know if she's on the call or not, but she's been very instrumental in helping us move things along with the contractor. This contractor has some experience in delivering community benefits related deliverables in work that they've done with UFT in Scarborough, but not based on hard targets, because what I'm hearing from all the various procurement groups that I participate in is that York is sort of the leader when it comes to identifying hard targets as a deliverable in contracts. Even I believe the LRT project, the Metrolinx projects, there are no hard targets. I think they're sort of aspirational percentage numbers, and I'm sure you're familiar with those contracts, Brendan, to some extent. But from what I'm hearing, we're the first to actually embed hard deliverables. So we'll see how it goes.
Could you talk a bit about for the contractors for this project? So can you talk about what does that mean? Because I'm seeing a lot of contractors on this call.
In terms of what specifically, the targets?
The targets for the contractors.
Well, it's simple. If we say that you have to hire a minimum of 10 apprentices, then you have to do that, right? You have to work with your local trade unions. If you're having difficulty sourcing, again, in the contract, we provided TCBN as a connection point or a linchpin to reach out, and through some of the programs that you guys deliver and have in place, they can draw from that readily. So it's not that the contractor actually has to go out and reinvent the wheel and do all of this legwork and heavy lifting to find these young people or newcomers, not only young people but newcomers, right? Equity seeking. We have that linkage with TCBN, again, a pipeline that can facilitate the flow, because contractors are always ready to point the finger, right, at something such as this, where we say you must, shall, will. So, well, you want me to do this? I've hired this individual. They don't show up to work, or whatever the excuse is, and then that's a delay claim on my end on the project because I'm delaying them. right? So again, reaching out to the experts such as TCBN and Biosocial Canada to to gain their partnership and their knowledge and their experience, bring that to the table to help us in a relationship with the contractor to make things move along fairly smoothly and efficiently.
Okay, awesome. Can you talk a little bit about what was your job before you worked at York University?
Okay, do you have how much time do you have? I'll try to be brief. So my background is primarily construction procurement. So prior to York, I had two full-time jobs. I worked for a large Canadian industrial electrical distributor. I started at the sales counter there. In total, I spent about 8 years there. One of my clients, actually, one of the accounts that I had when I worked at that company, sort of, made an offer to me to be a senior buyer. And I accepted the position. I applied and I got it. And I worked with them for about 9 years. At the time, that company was called BFC Construction, and they later merged with Armbro Construction in Brampton to form the construction company that most of you know today called Acon Group. So I worked with Acon Group for 9 years and kind of made my way up through that company, and I left with the title of Director of Corporate Procurement. They went through some changes after that merger, and I figured, you know what, it's time to move on. So I saw an opportunity at York for a construction specialist to help their facilities group. Applied, and I was successful. So I started at York. I've been at York 12 years, roughly. Started as a construction specialist, then made assistant director, and now director, and currently in this role about 4 years as director. So that's kind of the Coles Notes version of my career.
And was there something specific that made you want to get into, that made you get into social procurement?
Not really. So it wasn't my decision. It was a directive received from the university's president, really. So there's Human Rights and Social Justice Working Group, which is a subcommittee of the President's Sustainability Council. They developed a document called the Anchor York U Community Benefits Framework. And you guys, anyone interested in reading that document, it's located on the procurement website at York University. So the framework placed a focus on York as an anchor institution. And by an anchor institution, I mean, it's like an anchor institution is like a municipality or a hospital or a university in our case, where we're anchored into the community, right? We're not going anywhere. We're embedded there. York isn't going to close up shop and move to Caledon next year. We're not going anywhere. So that's what an anchor institution means. So, we have to do our part in growing, supporting, and developing its surrounding community. And the report focused on local employment, community engagement, neighborhood building through infrastructure, and social procurement as the 4 areas of target. So back in 2017, a number of senior leaders, including the president at the university, issued a call to action to implement community-focused engagement in these areas, these 4 areas. And I was called upon by that leadership to lead a working group to develop a pan-university social procurement policy. So that's where it all started for me. And so I pulled together a cross-functional working group, including representation from our president's office, legal services. We always have to have a lawyer at the table. Facilities, because it's important to include facilities, because from the get-go, we saw that construction would be like the low-hanging fruit. So we wanted to make sure that we had representation from facilities. And so we invited the AVP facilities to sit at the table. We also had ancillary and food services at a table, someone from the provost office, and folks from finance and sustainability. So we drafted a policy, took us about a year, and we submitted it to the various subcommittees throughout the university, and it was finally approved by the board last December. So we actually have a working policy. And again, if anyone wants to have a look at it, it's on the procurement webpage at York University.
Appreciate that. What do you like about your job, specifically social procurement?
Hmm. Well, I like, you know, maybe there's two streams here. So I really like my job. I love my job. It's a huge responsibility. I have a large team, but I really love my job. So from the perspective of social procurement, I think it's simple for me. Look, we're going to spend 250, $300 million every year. It's a given. So why not be intentional in how we spend that money, right? Why not say, Mr. or Mrs. Contractor, this is how we need you to direct the spend. It's not against the law to do that. We're going to spend the money anyway. It's just, again, being intentional, right? And so we have a vibrant community around us. Why not try to add to that vibrancy and provide opportunity for all so we all grow and benefit together as a community?
I don't mean to interrupt, but say for myself, like as a crane operator, right? How would I find out I have access to a crane even if I wanted to? How do I find out what opportunities there could possibly be there for myself or those who are involved in maybe heavy equipment or as crane operators like myself?
So that's an interesting question, and I think your skill sets are sort of unique as a crane operator. I think if do you own your business? Do you own your business, or you're just
I don't probably own my own business, right? But I'm an operator and I have even access to a crane if I wanted.
And is that position is that sort of skill, is it unionized or controlled in any way, or are you kind of on your own?
Presently in Southern Ontario, it's heavily unionized, right? But the operational engineers in Ontario, right? I'm going to tell you straight, they really don't hire a lot of Black people. They may have one or two token Black person, and after it, the door is slammed. I mean, you can go by any site. Most of the crane operators I know, they go out west to work, right?
Because of the demand.
No, because they don't hire them. They don't hire Black people here in Ontario.
Oh, is that right?
One guy usually, but I find it very difficult to get in Ontario. It's easier for me to go to Alberta and get on a crew there. Okay. I mean, they're less bureaucratic out there, right? But I don't know.
See, it's an industry I'm not at all, I'll admit, not at all familiar with. And so if we're building a building, obviously there has to be a crane on the building.
Absolutely. So 100%. Right? Heavy equipment operators they're the foundation.
So what I would like to do is, one of the other things in addition to apprentices, like the trade apprentices that we mentioned in our contracts as mandatory deliverables, we also on some of the larger contracts mandate that they have to hire administrative support staff for the, in the trailer, or laborers to clean up at the end of the day.
They will hire a lot of laborers, right? But if for operation engineers, the key is to get in as an apprentice.
Okay.
Right, or to get in as an operator.
Okay.
Right.
So, yeah, I think what I'd like to do is if my coordinates, I'm sure will be available. My contact information.
That'd be crazy interesting if you can find it about,
So Rain, I'm just gonna pause there. I'm gonna give my contact information, and then if you want to connect later on, we could do an email intro.
Okay, no problem. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I'd like to meet with you actually. If once, just give me a call or something. I'm sure Brandon's going to provide or supply my contact information. I'd be very, very happy to have a chat with you so I can understand your industry a bit better and see what we can do to include language in our contracts that allow folks with skills such as yourself to have an opportunity to work on our projects.
Okay, well, Dex, I'm wondering if would you be interested in leaving your contact information in the chat?
Yep. Yeah? I can do that. Yeah.
Or you can, if you prefer, I can do the email intro.
Okay.
Well, you can send. Why don't you send an email after? That way, everyone has it.
I'm gonna go back on mute now.
So okay, perfect. So what I would ask for is for folks who are interested in getting in contact with Dexter, just write your name in the chat. You can send me a private message, or just write it in the chat. And if you put it publicly, we have Sarah. I'm gonna ask Sarah or Manuela if you guys can just take note or just copy and paste those information. Sarah and Manuela is from TCBN. So just so we can send the email to those who are interested with an email introduction. Thank you very much.
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you, Manuela. Next question, Dexter, if you can talk about what are 2 challenges that you face doing your job?
2 challenges. So I'd say.
Sorry, Dexter, you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute for some reason. Sorry.
Second. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, repeat the question. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I would say the first challenge would be procurement non-compliance. And by non-compliance, that just means that you're not following the rules. So public sector procurement is governed by institutional level policies. And so the university has its own set of policies that you have to abide by when you're buying goods and services. And then there's another layer, provincial policies. There's also federal procurement policies. And lastly, there's international policy or legislation, which means that there can be dire consequences when these rules are not followed. So consequences could include being sued by suppliers for not following our own rules and processes. And then there's also the risk of reputational harm to the university's brand by being negatively portrayed in the media. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with WE. It's been all over the news with the Prime Minister and his conflict of interest, awarding a sole source contract to WE, that charitable organization, almost $1 billion. That sort of thing is wrong. Within the realm of public sector, the best thing to do is put everything out publicly and have the general public bid on it as an opportunity. So in terms of a baseline rule, everything at York in excess of $100,000, we are obligated to post it publicly for the general public to bid on an opportunity, whatever it is we're buying. Okay. Another challenge. Go ahead.
Sorry. So yeah, sorry about that, Dex. So when you say over 100,000, is there any rosters? Do you guys have rosters that you guys will refer to for any jobs also as well?
Yeah, so that's a different process. So what you're referring to, I believe, Amin, is our pre-qualification rosters. So there's a process called pre-qualification. That's also a public, like an open public process. So if we're looking for general contractors, say to perform work up to $1 million, we would issue a public document on MERX, M-E-R-X. That's one of the e-tendering sites that we use, and it's widely used across the public sector. So if you're a construction company and you're interested in getting on the York roster as a vendor of record for 3 years, meaning we go back, we have a pre-established list of 10 companies. Every time we have a procurement opportunity for a construction project up to $1 million, we always go out to the 10 companies on that list. Right. So in order to get to that stage, you have to do something or conduct a process called a pre-qualification. And so it's a public document. We may receive 50 or 60 submissions from general contractors. We evaluate and score, and then we select the top 10 highest ranking companies. And they get added to a roster for 3 years. Once the 3-year period expires, we go back out to market again, and we start the process all over again. Does that help, Amin?
Yes, thank you. Just one last, when does that period come again to get on the roster?
So it varies because we have tons of rosters for all sorts of different services, whether it be general construction services, it could be engineering services. It's on our website. Everything's posted on our website, all the rosters. The contract start and expiration dates are also listed on our website, so you can have a look there.
Thank you.
So the other challenge, Brandon, is staff retention. I know it's probably relevant to the conversation, but you asked me, so I'm telling you. So in public sector procurement, staff are in very high demand because institutions are always seeking individuals that are knowledgeable and familiar with the ever-changing procurement legislation, because it changes every 2 to 3 years. So we invest in our staff, spend a lot of money on them to train, and we send them to workshops. And once they have a number of years under their belt, we find that they tend to move on to municipalities and the province that tends to pay a bit more than universities. And this is especially common with millennials, because they seem to be always chasing the money. So that's probably the two sort of stresses I have in terms of my job.
Sorry, to your first challenge, how is this next question sort of ties into it? How is York University keeping contractors accountable in adhering to the social procurement policy and the people that they hire to work on the university projects?
Okay, sure. So we do this in several ways. The contractor is required from the beginning of the project to provide a procurement plan. Okay, that's part of a deliverable in the actual tender. So the procurement plan or social procurement plan, that outlines how they intend to deliver on the social procurement deliverables in the contract. The plan is then jointly reviewed and approved by York with the contractor. And then following this, the contractor is required to provide reports and metrics on a bi-monthly or quarterly or weekly or whatever we agree to in the contract or in the procurement plan in terms of reporting frequency. The names, addresses, hours, things like that of the individuals that are working. So for example, apprentices that are hired on the project. So we hold their feet to the fire. They have to provide this information to us. It's part of the deal, okay? The same must be done for goods and services procured locally if there's an element of that within the contract. And if they fail to adhere to these deliverables, we'll likely debar them from bidding on future opportunities at the university. So we're not just doing this for window dressing. These are contractual obligations that they must deliver on. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. There's been a few questions coming in. So I'm gonna ask folks, we're gonna take up the questions afterwards. Please write your questions in the chat, just so we know the order of these questions. Because we're not in the same room, it's hard to know which order and so forth. So if you write the question at the end of when we get into the question and answer period, I will then say your name and you can ask your question yourself. But that just helps us see the order of the questions. And we want to make sure that we respect people's time and we finish exactly at 7:30. So continuing with the questions, what are you looking for in contractors who you hire through social procurement?
So it's quite simple. So when we hire contractors at York under a social procurement framework, embedded into the contract, such as the minimum number of apprentices to be hired on the project or a minimum amount of dollars spent among local suppliers, I'm looking to them to work in tandem with the university and other community partners such as TCBN or Duke Heights BIA, Emory Village BIA, which are all partners. We've reached out to all of them. They're part of the team as well. Or diverse owned suppliers and social enterprises to deliver on these contractual obligations. And again, I keep using the word contractual obligations because it's not a maybe or if I feel like it or, this is too much of a hassle, so I'm not going to do it, right? It's part of the deal. It's on black and white and they have to deliver on it. So a deliverable of the contract, is that we meet on a monthly basis or weekly or whatever the procurement plan states, the frequency of our meetings to be, and they have to provide those metrics to us. So we want to see pay stubs, we want to see number of hours worked, we want to see the addresses of these apprentices so we can actually confirm that the postal codes are correct, where they're drawing from and this sort of thing. So again, this is a formal agreement, and if they fail to deliver, there could be consequences. If we're not going to fire them off the project that they're working on, but it's likely that they won't be allowed to bid at the university in future.
Sorry, I'm gonna ask folks if they can go on mute. Sorry, yeah, just a reminder, please go on mute. Sorry, continue, Dexter.
Yeah, no, so I think I finished.
Okay.
It's a contract, right? It's a legally binding document which forms that relationship. And the requirement is that, you know what, you guys have to deliver on this or else.
Okay, and then I guess the next question is, what are your expectations for construction workers that get hired through the social procurement policy?
So, so I might be a bit philosophical on this one. I think we're looking to apprentices hired on any of our projects to show a high level of commitment towards the opportunity being offered to them, right? I think that York has taken the step to develop a policy, a social procurement policy, that facilitates possibilities and opportunities, right? For these individuals. Now it's over to these individuals to harness that and capture that. I think I also see this as a partnership where success is a mutual benefit to both York University and the local community at large. So York delivers on its pillars, again, of accessibility, connectedness, excellence, and impact as an anchor institution, one apprentice at a time, and eventually develops a community filled with constituents that are doing their part in the partnership to build a more strong and vibrant community. So that's what we're looking to achieve.
Thank you for that. What are the challenges of getting people to buy into social procurement on a whole? And that could mean, I said people, I know it's general, but that could mean contractors. It could mean union. It could mean, the list goes on. But in your opinion, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing to get people to buy into this idea?
So maybe starting at York first, I would say we really had no issue we really had no issues with policy implementation or buy-in at the university. The initiative drew immediate support from our colleagues in facilities, like I mentioned earlier, the AVP facilities. When we approached them, we spoke about a pilot project. No issues whatsoever. Again, because I guess from the onset, we had a seat at the table set aside for them and other key people, right? When I convened the working group back in 2018. So they understood, facilities in particular, understood the value and the potential impact that embedding community benefits into our tenders would have on the local community. And we've even gone as far now as outside of facilities, and we've issued a couple of service contracts with, I believe, for laundry services, where we've embedded social procurement and community benefits deliverables right into those agreements. So I can't honestly say that there's been any challenges along the way so far. Now on the contractor side, maybe I back up a bit. Social procurement isn't a new thing. Like I believe the city of Toronto has gone as far as making a commitment to ensuring that contracts of a certain value are automatically assigned weights and scores and deliverables around social procurement. There's other municipalities. It's huge out west. I know in Vancouver, Victoria area, there's a lot of municipalities in that area that have embraced social procurement. The federal government, I know that they've done some things on that front. We may be the first university in Ontario to have gone as far as we have with it. Metrolinx is doing some things. So slowly and surely, where I'm going with this is the construction industry is going to be put on notice to say, you know what, if you guys want to work at York and other, leading edge, cutting edge sort of progressive institutions, you're going to have to embrace this movement because it's here to stay, right? On some of the projects that we've tendered so far, it's probably 50-50 in terms of the quality of the responses, because what we do in the RFPs is we apply weights and scores to whether or not you have a social procurement program or policy as a constructor. And if you don't, then tell us how you intend to deliver on those requirements in the RRFP, if you were the awarded contractor. So again, it's 50-50. I would say some of the larger construction companies like Ellis Don, Acon, PCL, they're quite familiar with the concept because they've had, you know, a number of years of exposure to it, maybe working with Aboriginal groups and that sort of thing out west. But some of the mid-sized to smaller contractors, it's a new concept. So I think how we address that is through training and informing the construction community on the benefits of social procurement and you know, community benefits agreements.
Is education about this framework a large part of the work that you do?
It is, and it's going to be even larger, because I think one of the things we want to do, we've been talking to some of the local BIAs such as Emory and Duke Heights. We want to run some workshops. I want to personally run some workshops with them for contractors and other service providers within their jurisdictions, so they can understand and learn more about social procurement. What is it we're looking for? And also take the opportunity to share how to respond to RFPs and tenders to York University and other public sector entities, because a lot of these small businesses, they don't have the large sort of marketing room where these RFPs are churned out. They don't have the resources, and some of them are just downright overwhelmed with the idea of responding to an RFP. So I think education training, which is something, you know, it takes an hour to run a webinar or to, well, like webinar these days, you can't do anything in person anymore. To run a webinar, it's an hour of my time, which I'm willing to give up. So people, you know, small businesses can understand that it's not that daunting to respond to a tender or an RFP. And so they understand what needs to be signed, that you're going to be disqualified if you don't sign this form, or what you need to submit and the process and all that. So it's a huge and it's a very significant and important element.
Is there two questions around that? The first question is, do you know the dates for those webinars as yet?
I haven't established anything at this point. We, again, just early stages conversations with Duke Heights and Emory on partnering to deliver some of those, but no, nothing yet.
Okay, that's
but
good.
I can tie you in or connect you once dates have been set.
That'd be perfect. That'd be perfect. The second question to that is, what were you seeing that you said that we needed to do something regarding something around the contractors and education around the tendering process?
I think it's around the quality of the responses. So when we issue the RFP, what they actually put together and send back to us. Around social procurement, in some cases, it's very weak. In some cases, they don't, you know, and we hyperlink to the policy so they can actually, you know, look at the policy to understand what social procurement is. We have an FAQ on our website that talks about, you know, social procurement, defines equity-seeking groups. It defines a host of other things. So we've directed all that information to them, but I'm not sure if they didn't take the time to look at it or if they just didn't understand it. I think one of the other challenges is the fact that social procurement, in the grand scheme of things, is you're looking to build a $45 million building. And so in terms of your weighting that you apply to social procurement, it's only 5 or 10% of the overall qualification requirements, because you're more focused on the technical competencies of a contractor that's going to build a building on time and on budget. You don't want to say, well, 50% has to go towards social procurement, because, you know, facilities they'll be quite upset with me, because we're shifting focus away from competent contractors and we're heavily focused on the social piece. But that said, slowly but surely, it's my intention to increase that 5 or 10% number towards social procurement to a much larger number, perhaps even 20 or 25% in due course.